and white and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Mike Booth.
The unbeaten run continues as United pick up 4 points in a week thanks to a win at Grimsby and a draw at home to Crewe. We look back on those games while looking ahead to this weekend's trip over to the East Coast to face Hartlepool United at Victoria Park. You know what, I'd actually catch myself a little bit there when I was doing the intro because I'd written down winless Hartlepool United at Victoria Park because I didn't realise, I read this at the start of the week, that they were playing in midweek as well. And of course, they are no longer winless. They finally become the last team this season to pick up 3 points in the Football League.
Mysterious Curle is at work already, isn't he?
Yes, it's funny how when we're previewing the Hartlepool game, Dan's not available to do it, isn't it, really? Yeah. He doesn't want to talk about Keith Curle at all, does he? How you doing, mate? You've been away for a couple of weeks, haven't you?
Yeah, been good. I only managed to watch the one game while I was on holiday, which was the Newport game. But
we've already done. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. But we're still unbeaten, aren't we? And I think even if this season had started not at the normal time, to be unbeaten I say unbeaten, only lost one game, but to have only lost one game going into October would be good. And obviously the season started even earlier, so. It's very good, but it's just disappointing, all the draws, isn't it, really? It's
frustrating, I think, is the way to describe it. But there you go. I mean, hey, and at least you survived the hurricane. Hurricane Ian, was it, I think, that you survived there in Florida?
It wasn't that bad. I just stayed in bed and watched Netflix for 2 days. So.
Fair dues. Right, okay. Let's get straight into things. Just to remind you that the podcast is sponsored by the Carlisle United Supporters Club London branch. The London branch is open to all Carlisle United fans. They've got members from Cornwall to Dundee and Houston, Singapore, and of course every part of London and the South East. They regularly meet up on away trips, as well as arranging many social events, supporters games and fundraising for the club. They'll be providing us with information for the away games as part of the preview section this season too. You can find out more about the London branch at their website, carlisle.londonbranch.org. Also a reminder, of course, you can follow us on social media at Brunton Bugle on Twitter and Instagram. Find us on Facebook as well. Search for Brunton Bugle. Click like. We're also on the Be Just and Fear Not Facebook group on Twitter. Facebook. Fully recommend you join that if you haven't already. Really, really good community there. And the companies.net message board. And of course, if you want to go old school, drop us an email. bruntonbugle@gmail.com. And if you haven't already as well, subscribe to the podcast on whatever good podcast app you happen to use, whether that be Pocket Casts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and if those podcasts give you the chance to review the podcast well, if you could give us a 5-star review, that would be wonderful. Well, let's get into it, Mike. There's a little bit of news to cover this week. We haven't had that for a while. We're also going to do Loan Watch. We're bringing that back. We didn't do it really at the start of the season. There's only 2 or 3 of them out, but now there's 5 of them out on loan. It's probably worthwhile at least seeing what they're up to, isn't it, I think? Only real other bit of news other than the Loan Watch bit is actually a little update from the Carlisle United Supporters Group. So their latest update came last week. I think they had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I think, in fact, Dan, I think, was at that meeting, wasn't he? One of our presenters. He's obviously now part of Kiosk, and in his Kiosk role, he attended the meeting. But the interesting thing to come out was Chief Executive Nigel Clibbins gave one of his regular updates, didn't he? A few little tidbits out of this that may be of interest to fans who haven't spotted this yet. The first one is, I think, something that both me and you can fully agree on is great news, is the news that the kit contract is up for renewal. And I've put a tender in, but basically they're speaking to different companies right now about the potential contract for next season. So not set in stone in words there, is it? But it sounds like they're getting rid of Aria.
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, they are some of the worst kits ever, aren't they? It's not even just the designs aren't great. The quality of the material's terrible. The badges are ironed on. I mean, the size issue is an absolute joke, right?
Yeah.
My nephew Miles was a mascot for the Wimbledon game the other week, and I bought him and my niece some kits. Now, bear in mind, Miles only turned 5 the other week. I got him a size 6 to 7 kit, and although it fit him, it wouldn't last him much longer than maybe a couple of months later. It'd be too big for it. That shouldn't be the case. the kit sizes should be so much better. It really does.
I've heard some people say as well that they've got the home and away shirts, and like the home shirt will be like really tight on them, and the away shirt is quite baggy.
Yeah,
and it's the same size.
Absolutely farcical, isn't it? But there you go. Yeah, so it looks like potentially getting rid of it. If go on, Mike. If you had a dream, realistic kit maker, who would you want?
Well, you say realistic, but I've always been a fan of Adidas kits, and I think Accrington have them. So why can't we? Obviously, might not be the best sort of deal for the club.
That's the key thing. It's the deal for the club, and it's not just about how much you get per shirt you sell.
Yeah.
It's also how much free training gear they're going to give you, because that's the bit that quite often cripples clubs in those situations.
But you could argue, I mean, I haven't bought the past few array kits. You could argue if we had a nicer kit, it would sell more. True,
that's a fair point, but there you go. I think, personally, I'd like to see Hummel. I think they do really nice kits, and they've done one for Cambridge in recent seasons as well. They've done some nice kits for Everton. So yeah, Hummel's the one I'd like. I think you'd like Adidas, and I think Dan would probably go with Adidas as well. So I'm probably outvoted on that one in terms of our opinions. But there you go. Of a few little bits that came out, Clibo's update. The club's not going to be taking advantage of the opportunity to move kick-off times to avoid floodlight cost increase, as obviously with the energy bills going up, as I'm sure we all know, and it's the same for the club. The costs of running floodlights at games is going up quite a bit. But the club have looked into it, and basically the savings are negligible, basically, compared against what they'd actually get from basically not just from ticket sales, but also from getting fans down early to have a drink and stuff like that. Because I mean, if you go for a 1 o'clock kickoff, say, how more inclined are you to come down at, say, 11 o'clock, 10 a.m. something to come and have a drink? You're probably not, are you? You're probably not going to eat as much as well. So,
well, I mean, for us as well, we'd have to leave home very early to come, and there's a lot of Blues who travel from outside the county as well.
It's true. I don't think it would bother me quite as much, that I don't mind, because it means you get back early as well. Because quite often me and you don't get back till 10 o'clock at night at the earliest sometimes for Saturday games. So yeah, it wouldn't bother me as much, but I totally understand the club's thinking behind this. It's a fair point. So yeah, basically with our unique geography and the whole setup, they basically thought it's not really worthwhile. So we will be kicking off at 3 o'clock for the Four Steeple, unless, of course, the police change their minds, as they did for the Barrow game, didn't they? So there you go. Some good news in terms of ticket and commercial revenue. All of them are up for this season so far, which is really good to see. Matchday programme under threat. Sales continue to decline, and it's getting to the point where it's barely covering its costs now. If it goes any lower, it just won't wash its own face. So, I mean, many clubs have already stopped doing them, haven't they? And it's one of those things I used to love. I used to buy one at every game I used to go to, but I just don't now. So, I can't really complain if the club stops selling them, because I'm part of the reason, because I just don't buy it anymore. I don't know about you.
Yes, I mean, I haven't bought one in about 15 years now, I think. Yeah. And it's the same with printed media in general, isn't it? People just aren't buying it. They're sort of reading stuff online more, and it's just the way of the world nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, everyone gets all their updates from the live scores app and things like that, so they don't really need to be looking through squads and things like that as well, do they? So there you go. One final bit of news, probably the most important one of the lot. Still no contact or response from PurePay regarding the debt. Interest is going to occur, likely to be the amount of £100,000 this year. Frustrating, I think it's the most polite way you can put it. I can think of some less polite ways of putting it, but I won't on here. But it's a little bit farcical now. What it has shown is that, frankly, it's a good thing that these people never took over the club. If this is their attitude towards it, then I'm glad they don't own the club. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, surely there's some kind of, I don't know, someone can step in.
Like an ombudsman or something like that.
Yeah, something.
It's a weird thing. For me, this is the risk, I suppose, of having some sort of, what's the best way to put it? A deal that seems to be well in your favour, and it's a take it easy sort of deal, if you know what I mean. There's no rush to pay and things like that. That's the risk, isn't it? And when it comes to it and you want to pay, they can just ignore you, and they can create a situation that causes problems for you. So.
But they've got their guy on the operating board, isn't it?
Yeah, but he doesn't seem to have a huge amount of involvement, does he? And
yeah, so
I don't know
what's he doing there then?
I don't know
Do
how.
you know what I mean?
I don't know how they've reacted since obviously they bombed off Pop, which everybody fine well knows that they put him in place at the club and what a disaster he was. I'm just going to make a note there to bleep his name out. I just realised I said it. Oh, that's not very good, is it? But yeah, so it's frustrating. But at the same time, we shouldn't allow that to worry us too much. We should concentrate on the positives on the pitch at the moment, I think. And my thought is just keep it going on the pitch, keep things going well, keep money coming into the club. And then hopefully next summer, Dean finally cuts his ties with Man United and we get a nice lump sum. And
Dean Henderson, so
did I say for God's sake. Got him on the head now. Right, I've got to make those changes when I finish. Yes, so Dean Henderson finally cuts his ties with Manchester United, and yeah, we get a nice lump sum, and we can move on, pay them off, and never let them, dirty our corridors ever again, so to speak. Take down all the Edinburgh Woolermill signs and things like that as well, ideally. So there you go. So yeah, that's an update from CSG. Generally positive though, good news all round. But yeah, just a couple of little bits bubbling in the background, I guess. We'll do a quick loan watch then, Mike. I'll try and bash through these as quickly as possible. So yeah, obviously with the fact that now we've got 5 players out on loan or work experience, and sort of general news is probably going to be a bit quiet over the next few months, we'd imagine. We're going to bring back the loan watch section, starting off with the one who's arguably at the highest level of the 5, you would say. Yeah. Max Kilsby. He's at Adon Athletic. He's 9 appearances so far. One of them was a sub for the Galabanki. He's got another full 90 minutes for them at the weekend, but not an enjoyable afternoon for Max. Their trip to the Highlands ended a 5-1 hammering at Elgin City. Former Blues, Greg Fleming and Rowan Steele and Josh Galloway all featured in this game as well, while Steve Swinglehurst and Charlie Burns were unused subs. Yeah, it's a good learning curve for Max this season, I think, because, I mean, Anna having made the playoffs last season, having a very tough time of it, aren't they? They maybe missing Owen Moxon in the middle, possibly, I don't know, but it kind of feels like... I had a look before at the division, and it does look a tough division, actually, now. I mean, I don't follow Scottish football that closely, but I know a little bit, and when you look at some of the teams up there's quite a few teams who drop down from higher levels. You like to use Stranraers, and it's going to be tough for them, I think, to be right up there. As long as they can keep themselves away from relegation, that's the key thing for Anna, I think. But
but if they're under the cosh a bit, it's a lot of it's a steep learning curve for Kilsby, isn't it? So yeah, and it could work out well for us.
And he's playing most weeks, which is a good thing as well. That's a good thing to see. Dropping down a level in Scotland to the Lowland League. Lewis Bell, he's on loan at Gretna 2008. He's made 7 appearances, none of them as a sub, and he's got himself a couple of goals as well so far. He missed the 2-1 win over Tranent at the weekend, but yeah, he ever since Michael McIndoe's coming in manager, he seems to have picked up his form a little bit. He scored in the midweek 3-1 win over Garley-Ferrydean before being substituted in the 65th minute, and I think he scored in the previous game before that as well, so good to see him get a few goals there, isn't it, really? I mean, he just needs to get a bit of confidence, doesn't he, really? And it's one of those ones I think you're looking at. If you can get a decent run and get a few goals and a bit of good form in his legs, bring him back and hopefully send him to a slightly higher level in January, maybe.
Yeah, hopefully.
And maybe even one that Aaron might even look to take on loan if he does really well in the Lowland League, possibly. You never know, but he needs to do something to kickstart his career, really, doesn't he? Speaking of people who need to do something to kickstart their career, Sam Fishburn. Obviously dropped down a level after a tough time at Blythe Spartans. Seems to be enjoying life a bit more with the Highwaymen, doesn't he, at Morpeth Town?
Yeah, he's got 2 in his last 2 now, I think.
Yeah, so obviously he scored his first goal for his new club the weekend in a 3-0 win over Stalybridge Celtic. He's followed that up with another goal in midweek in the 1-1 draw with Bamber Bridge. Last midweek he did actually play as well. He played the full 90 minutes. It was his first start, I think, in a 6-3 win over his former club Lancaster City. Somehow didn't manage to get on the score sheet in that game. Did he? That's a bizarre one, isn't it? And
they're playing Lancaster again this weekend.
Is it this weekend or was the weekend after?
Yeah,
I can't remember. It's the FA Cup, isn't it, that they're playing against them, isn't it, I think?
I thought it was league, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you're right, actually. It might well be it's the league he's playing in, possibly. I'm not sure. But yeah, so playing them quick fire games against his former team. But yeah, good to see him getting on the score sheet.
Yeah. And sort of similar to Bell, hopefully, if he can sort of hit the form that he did for Lancaster last season, then maybe, in January we can loan him out to a higher level.
Yeah, I think a good 2 or 3 months though at a club would be good for him rather than what we did last time. Is 1 month for Lancaster and he'd call back straight away. I always think that was a sign of desperation by Beach because we were so short up front, really, wasn't it? And really, he should have been kept out really for a couple more months. I think it might have actually helped him a bit more, but there you go. Gabe Breeze, he's also gone out on loan. He's gone to Widnes. I think actually this happened after we recorded last week. I think. So he's joined the Northern Premier League Division 1 West Side Widnes on a 1 month loan deal. Going to be a challenge for him there, is it? Because they're right at the bottom of their division.
Yeah.
Tough start for the Whites. And his first 2 games, that were a 2-1 defeat at Newcastle Town. That's Newcastle based in Stoke, I think, isn't it? And followed by a 4-1 loss against second place Manchester-based side Mossley. Probably not the worst thing to be as keeper going to a side struggling near the bottom if you want to get some games, I guess.
Didn't do Jordan Pickford any harm, did it? So
no, he was getting battered every week, wasn't he? And we saw how much he did for Mark Gillespie when he went out to Blythe Spartan. He definitely came back a different keeper. And I think it's a really good move for Gabe, and hopefully he'll come back with a few games under his belt and a bit more confidence. Another goalkeeper's gone out, though. Lewis Boyd, we mentioned this one a couple of weeks ago. He's at Carlisle City. He's made 3 appearances now. 4 if you technically include a 13-1 win over Braithwaite in the Cumberland Cup. But I don't think, that he'd do that with the youth team when you're here, so we don't really count that. But yeah, it's been a bit of an up-down start for him so far. His first game was a defeat, but followed that up with a 2-2 draw at West Auckland Town at the weekend. And then this midweek he played in the Cumbrian Derby against Penrith, and that finished 0-0. So got his first clean sheet for the Sky Blues. Interesting one. A friend of mine went to that game and he said he can kick it absolutely miles, can Lewis Boyd. He said that was his exact words. So clearly got a big kick on him. But I think, as me and Dan mentioned, he's got a tough time, hasn't he, with two young keepers already on the books ahead of him at the moment.
But it might work out better for, all 3 of them, because if you've just got one, they might just sort of, become number 2 and sit on the bench, whereas because there's a few, we've got the luxury of being able to actually loan them out. Yeah, that's the way it works, isn't it? Yeah. Right,
let's get into the match review section, Mike. We've got 2 games to come, haven't we? One really exciting, good result. One less exciting, but a decent result, I think it's fair to say. We'll start with the first one. Obviously, we've got the Carlisle 0, Crewe 0 to come. There is not much to talk about in that game, believe me, you and me. Let's start off, though, with Grimsby Town 1, Carlisle United 2. Yes, the Blues ended their, I think it was a 9-game run without a win away from home, and continued their excellent start of the season with a win at the Mariners. You obviously didn't watch this game, Mike, because you're too busy having fun over in Florida. But you've seen the highlights of this.
Yeah.
All round, it looked like quite a decent performance, didn't it?
Yeah, and Stretton, by all accounts, seems to, there was sort of a few murmurs that it was maybe a bit of a flop, but he seemed to look a bit more confident, and he's looked all right on the left, sort of out wide a bit, cutting in. So yeah, hopefully he's a good option, and it was a great goal, wasn't it, from Oxen to get his first goal for the club? Yeah,
Stratton's an interesting one, isn't he? Because he's coming in sort of almost a central striker, but I do have a feeling one of these players who maybe will be best and adapt a bit better to playing as a sort of a wide and a front 3 when needed, and he's got decent feet on him, and he's got a little bit of pace as well. He can get away from a man. He had a good game in this one. He had a pretty decent game against Newport, actually. Not quite as good against Crewe, but to be honest, the whole team wasn't great against Crewe, so I'm not going to hold that against him, certainly not. But yeah, obviously this game was the rearranged game from the original one that was a bit of a washout, to say the least. Team selection, no massive surprise, was there really, considering the lack of players available, that he went with the same starting 11, but it was a big blow on the bench, wasn't it? Sonny Hilton out for 8 weeks by looks of things.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe one of the things that we've missed a little bit. I'm not saying for 1 second that the players starting games aren't putting in enough effort, but I think if there was players on the bench chomping at the bit to get a go, it might just give the players starting an extra 5% if they're sort of fighting to keep the place a little bit.
I think as well it's as much being able to give them a break, because
yeah, exactly.
This is something we'll come on to when we talk about the Crewe game, but a lot of these players have played the full 90 minutes for a lot of games, and the kind of players you think to yourself, I'd rather be able to give them a 10-20 minute rest at the end of games sometimes, but we're not really getting that opportunity because we haven't really got the options, if we're honest. Well, let's talk about the goals then, Mike. You've obviously touched on already, but Owen Moxon, first goal for the club, and he's been threatening to do it for a while. Finally broke his duck, and what a strike to do it with. Yeah,
exactly. It was cracking, wasn't it? And it's good to have a player that can do that, because it makes teams nervous if he's sort of outside the box, and it can move defenders into positions that they maybe wouldn't want to be in, and can open up space for the strikers.
Yeah, obviously this goal came from, I'd say, brilliant work down the left by Jack Stretton as well, and rolled his man really, didn't he, on the touchline, and he does. I think he does keep it in. I know there's a bit of talk, he took it out. I don't think the whole ball crosses the line.
No. Yeah.
I think he's done really well there. Keeps it in, gets away, cuts inside, plays it to Moxon, and he just puts his laces through, doesn't it? And he bounces once and goes into the bottom corner past Max Crocombe. Interesting the way he struck the ball, isn't it? Because Simmer after the game said, didn't he? I think he said that. Or was it Simmer? Or was it Moxon himself? I think said that Simmer said to him basically that he'd been trying a bit too hard to get that. He's just trying to get that goal rather than just doing it on autopilot. He was almost trying to place the ball every time he was hitting it. And Simmer said to him, "You've got a great shot, and you just put your laces through it. Laces through it. Hope for the best, and you know what, the keeper might parry it, and someone might pick up the pieces."
Exactly.
And as it was, the keeper couldn't parry it because he couldn't get anywhere near it, could he? So a great strike from Owen puts it into the lead. I have to say, other than that, most of Grimsby's chances the first half actually were after this. They were kind of like just half efforts from the edge of the box that were either well wide or well saved. There was one that I wouldn't even say wholly spilled. It just sort of hit him and he picked up the loose pieces. Not really much to offer, but on the attack, Jack Stretton almost got his first goal when he went on a brilliant run down the left wing, gets into the opposition and box, and then sees his shot saved. I have to say, John Mellish did foul their play on the edge of the area in the build up to that. It was like I was sitting there like, oh, for God's sake, oh wait, he hasn't given it. Even John's like, did that sort of stop and walk thing and turn around like, oh, for God's sake, I've given away for. Oh no, I haven't given away for.
Yeah.
What's going on here? But Jack obviously didn't wait to see whether the whistle was blown. He played on as you should do. Yeah. And then up the other end, and Justin Dennis does what he does best, doesn't he? Got to give a shout out to Tefe here, or Fete, sorry.
It's a good assist. Yeah,
Grimsby right back, great assist. He had an appalling first half. He was slightly better second half, but he was at Jude Sterling levels of bad. That's how bad he was in that first half. It was terrible.
But it's not the first time this season that Dennis has latched onto a back pass from the opposition. And it probably won't be the last time either. He just has that little knack, doesn't he, of picking onto things like that.
He's deceptively quick over a few yards. He's not rapid. If you put a long one over the top, he's not going to go and chase it like an Amari Patrick, but he's deceptively quick and sharp in the mind over those few yards. And, Fete plays the ball back, basically. It was basically a little poke forward by Armour. Fete plays a quick ball back to Crocombe, and Dennis is in there like a shot, touches it round the keeper. I've got to say, it's a fantastic finish. A really good finish because it's a really tight angle, and he places it because there was a defender getting back on the line. He places it in the one place the defender can't get to it, and it's in the back of the net. 2-0 for half time, and he certainly enjoyed his celebration in front of his fans of his former team because he had a short loan spell there. I think 1 goal in 13 games. Didn't really enjoy his spell there, I think it's fair to say. And going into half time 2-0, couldn't have asked for much better, really, could we? Yeah,
I think we didn't really know what to do with ourselves because it's been a long time since we've gone into a game away from home 2-0 up. But yeah, it's then sort of second half, we just kind of had to sit back a bit. We didn't really threaten them too much. It was more just sort of dig deep and defend well, which we did. I'm
loath to say backs to the wall because I don't think it was backs to the wall because
no, not quite backs to the wall.
Because we didn't have any real chances goal wise. We didn't. Yeah. That's a fact. Grimsby only had really maybe 4-5 chances. One of them was the tap in for the goal when Gibson switched off a little bit. I wouldn't say switched off. I just don't think he got out quickly enough to close down. Otis Khan, who got himself to the byline, played a low ball across, and it was an easy tap in for Ifete. But bar that, some long range efforts that were straight at Holy, a header that went wide, and that's about it really. There was no real threat, and it was a good, solid defensive performance where the team showed great shape, great composure, great teamwork.
It's organised, wasn't it?
Really, really organised is absolutely the right word. Really, really well organised performance. I never had this feeling of like, oh, we're going to concede it. I was like frustrating that we switched off for that one moment for the goal. And other than that, I was like, I'm confident here. I feel we can do it. I mean, we mentioned the fact that obviously Stretton had a great game. I thought Moxon was brilliant in the middle. He was the WhoScored.com man of the match with 8.4, which I think is the highest anyone's got for us this season on WhoScored, which is quite impressive. But got to say, in defence, Corey Whelan, John Mellish and Paul Huntington was outstanding again. Absolutely. I mean, he is going to be a hell of a signing for us. Bear in mind, he's probably still just about building up his match fitness at the moment. He's been brilliant over this last. I like
the
games.
threat that he is on set pieces as well. I think he could be our sort of highest scoring centre back in a good few years.
It's a pleasant surprise, that isn't it? Because you bear in mind he is, he's only scored about 11 goals, I think, in his career with 300 appearances, but he looks like he could score well more than that. I wonder if teams just haven't been exploiting that before. He's a big lad as well.
Yeah, well, he's only scored one for us, but when he's not scoring, he's causing problems.
Ooh. Definitely, absolutely, and I just feel he's just been a fantastic signing for us, really. And all round decent performance. 2-1, we'll take that. Bit frustrating not to keep a clean sheet, but that's the way it is sometimes, and just have to deal with it. Right. Should we do 60-second reviews then for this one, Mike? Yep. I should know we haven't got a single 60-second review for the Crewe game because no one really wanted to talk about that. But we did something a bit different for that, so I'll tell you about that in a minute. But we'll start with Craig Mattinson. So Craig Mattinson travelled over, I think he lived in Yorkshire, I think he travelled over for the game to watch the Blues.
Hi lads, here's my 60-second review on my second trip to Brunton Park in little over a month. As I'm heading down to the ground, as you do, I check out the team news, and again I see our squad decimated by injuries, and I think we're in for a difficult night against a strong Grimsby team with a big crowd behind them. However, I should know better. This is Crewe United we're talking about, and Simo's installed some real resilience into our team. We were fantastic from minute one. Maybe not playing the flowing football that we want, but a one of effort, determination and grit. No more so than Jack Stretton, who epitomised this with a fantastic run down the left wing, laying it off for our very own Owen Moxon to bang in his first goal for the Blues. This has led to a particularly tough few minutes with Grimsby playing some lovely football, wing to wing, back and forward, good passing, but we held firm in a defence that was marshalled superbly by Huntington. On the stroke of half-time, we nick another. Dennis, on fire, nips in between and with an amazingly cool finish. Half-time, here we go. The onslaught starts, and although we were behind the goal away to the opposite end, there wasn't much to see as the game panned out pretty much in Carlisle's penalty area. But we're a stronger team this year, and we gave everything, hanging on, sometimes by luck, sometimes by pure brilliant effort, and at the end it was fantastic to be there and witness the first away win of the season. Up to 8th after 10 games, we're super proud of the Blues, and long may it continue. Up the Blues.
There you go. That's Craig's review of the game there. That's pretty much what we said, isn't it? Really, it's just nice to hear, really, isn't it? He's absolutely right. The effort-wise was fantastic, and it really is something that Simo has instilled. And I think that comes from the words he uses quite often. Simo, he's very straight talking. There's no bullshit, basically, is there, with Simo when he does his post-match interviews? He'll be honest. If he thinks the game was bad, he'll say it. If he doesn't think he'll say it. And he set high standards as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you can see as well, like, if you were a player, Simo is the kind of manager that you would just run through brick walls for.
Absolutely.
And Craig mentioned the injuries there, and it's something that we kind of glossed over a bit this week, but I think other clubs, they would sort of let that be an excuse, and they'd sort of languish down in the bottom half, maybe even lower, and sort of that'd be an excuse. But for us, it isn't, and we're where we are, and you just think when everyone's fit, the only way is up, surely.
That's the difference, isn't it? We're not using an excuse, we're using it as a, look how well we're doing, considering we've got all these injuries.
Exactly.
Actually, being where we are, it's pretty impressive, all things said. So, yeah, absolutely agree with that. Now, the second review we've got is not actually a Carlisle fan. It's Gab Sutton. Now, Gab Sutton is a League Two expert on Twitter. If you don't follow him already, you should do. I think it's at Gab Sutton, I think is his handle on Twitter. He basically tweets about League One and League Two and that kind of thing, and he does lots of different articles, different websites and stuff. He happened to be at the game, so I said to him, "Well, do you fancy giving us a quick 60-second review on your thoughts on United and the match generally?" So Gab was very kind enough to send this over to us. So here's what Gab had to say about the game.
So although Carlisle were outshot 18-5 in this game, and that would suggest that maybe there's an element of fortune in this victory, I'm going to say that was a deserved win. That's for a few reasons. I think partly because they're probably due a little bit of a redressing of the balance, because there's been lots of games where Carlisle have created probably the better chances and not had the results to show for it. So there's that sense. I think injuries have hit them really hard, and I think with what Paul Simpson had off the bench, I think that a battling victory is probably what you need in these circumstances. Hopefully a few can return, because I think it's 12 out now. But also, I think firstly Carlisle were really well organised in the first 60 minutes and then defended the penalty area well in the last 30. Paul Huntington was absolutely man of the match tonight. Absolutely outstanding, captain, fantastic. What an influence he's going to have this season. Callum Guy and Jordan Gibson, I think, seem to have matured on the defensive side of their game under Paul Simpson, to my eyes. Really good team, solid performance. And I think game state as well dictates quite a lot, because Carlisle basically leading from 15 minutes, so obviously that's going to impact the dynamics of the game. So well done Carlisle, big win, up to 8th and 1 point off the playoffs. Fair play, Blues.
Yeah, nice little assessment there. It's always nice to hear an outside voice, isn't it, talking about it and getting their thoughts. A couple of points I picked up from that is, one, he's made a very good point there. We've dominated a lot of games where we've had a lot of chances and not won them. And yet here's one where we probably haven't dominated in terms of the chances, but we've won it because we've been a bit more clinical. And that's a little nice redressing of the balance.
Although I'd be interested to see the expected goals stats, because, like you said and like Gab said, they had a lot of shots, but really, they weren't very testing with them.
I mean, Thomas had nothing to do in goal, really, other than obviously picking the ball out for that tapping. Another point I'll pick out there, he also, like we did, praise Paul Huntington for his performance. He said captain fantastic. Obviously Huntington wasn't captain, but that kind of shows the kind of role he plays. He doesn't need to be captain. He is basically playing like a captain, the way he organises them and leads the teams. That's a really interesting one to pick out as well, isn't it, really? But there you go. Right, let's briefly move on and cover the Crewe game before we talk a few general points. 0-0. Yeah, there was, I mean, I went back and watched the extended highlights for this on the club channel, and my God, there was nothing to pick out, really. I mean, they had a couple of chances. They had a free kick that went just wide. There was a couple of shots that Holy, comfortably saved, really. And one shot, really, from long range, where their keeper palmed it wide, and I think a header from Dennis where he flicked it down and beyond Mellish, and that was it, really. It's hard to pick any real positive out of this. I mean, I did enjoy Stino in the post-match. He was just brutally honest on it and said, it's just not a good game of football. We didn't play well with maybe one game too many. Haven't played all these games in a week, and not happy about the performance. But we've got a point, and that's a positive. And I think that's absolutely the way to look at it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think one positive, aside from the playing side of things, is another attendance over 5,000 with a pretty poor away turnout.
We're averaging about 4,800 home fans this season, aren't we? Which is good, because that's about a 10-20% increase on what we've had in last couple of seasons, when there's been fans allowed, I should say. Yeah. So I agree. I think it's a real positive, actually. Yeah, another decent crowd, and they're still coming in. You know what? If we keep ourselves up in those, just on the edge of the playoffs or in the playoffs, it'll rise. They'll rise. I've no doubt about it. I know people back home who are saying, "Oh, I'll come down to a game," and things like that. So it'll come with time. We've just got to be a little bit patient on that, I think. But yeah, as I mentioned, we didn't have any 6-second reviews this one. To be honest, we didn't actually chase anyone for one because we thought, what are we going to talk about? This is not a great game. What we did do, actually, though, after the game on Saturday, about 6 o'clock, I was driving back down to Liverpool because there was no trains running because of the strikes. So I'd parked myself up in T-Bay, the greatest service station in the world. and I got my phone out and we did a Twitter space. So if you don't know what these are, it's almost like a sort of live sort of show, isn't it? Obviously, you can do on Twitter, Mike. Have you listened to any Twitter spaces? There's been some very funny ones I've listened to.
I have listened to some at 3 o'clock in the morning of just absolute nonsense. But
wasn't there one where Declan Rice was on singing "Ice Ice Baby" or something like that on one of them? I think.
Yeah,
I seem to remember that anyway. But basically, what it is basically, we host it through the Brunton Bugle Twitter account at Brunton Bugle. And basically, we invited people to come on and talk about the game, basically, and say, well, what's your thoughts on the game and that kind of thing. And we were on for about a good 40 minutes, weren't we, I think, in the end. And I think about 4 or 5 different people coming on. We had a couple of people coming on asking me questions as well. And it was really good, actually. It was really, really nice to hear some good discussion. I know Paul Newton from BBC Radio Cumbria was on. He didn't have a chance to come and chat with us because he was busy and had to head off elsewhere, but he's mentioned that potentially him and Lummy and maybe James might even come on later ones. We try and do them after Radio Cumbria finish broadcasting, let them do all their post-match stuff and things first, and then after 6 o'clock what we're going to do is we're not going to do it every single match day, but we might do them sort of intermittently. So I might even do one this weekend after the Hartlepool game. I'll have to wait and see, but see how it goes basically. But yeah, some really good discussion in there, so we might do that a little bit more often for some of the games this season. And you can go back and listen to it now, actually. You don't have to have listened to it live. It's up there on our Twitter account. So go and give it a listen. Other talking points, Mike, before we move on to a little League 2 review. Performance overall, like I said, it was just a tired one, wasn't it? I think Crewe. I think it's just one of those ones where you look and you think... You've got to consider as well that quite a lot of those players have played the full 90 minutes in like all 3 of the games in the last week, which includes a long trip down South Wales, all the way back up to then travel all the way across to the East Coast in Lincolnshire to play Grimsby and all the way back to then play again on Saturday. So it's not been an easy week for them, has it?
No, and at the end of the day, I think over the 2 games, both Grimsby and Crewe, you would have taken 4 points, I think, but you would have taken sort of the draw at Grimsby and the win against Crewe. But
what you've said was exactly what they said on BBC Radio Cumbria. They said that. Yeah. They said, look, you probably want to get your points at Grimsby and then a win against Crewe, so your home fans are uplifted. But it is what it is, and you 4 points is a decent return from the 2 games. And actually, what it does, it keeps the unbeaten run going. So now, because obviously, as we'll touch on in a minute later on, winning run ended, as did, I think it was Swindon ended their winning run at the weekend as well. As a result of those results... we've now got the longest unbeaten run in the league alongside Bradford, 7 games. If we were to win against Hartlepool on Saturday, we would basically be averaging 2 points a game over the last 8 fixtures. Essentially 4 wins and 4 draws. I mean, that's good going. You can't grumble about that at all.
No, exactly. And these draws, they're keeping us in touch with the pack. You know, it's not getting too far away from us, and I think we're 1 win away from 4th.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so we're really, while we are in 10th, I think a win, even 2 wins, would see us leapfrog quite a few teams. Yeah,
definitely. There's definitely positives about there. Only other thing to really pick out is the good news about the players returning from injury as well. Obviously, Murray Patrick came on as a sub. Obviously, losing Hilton's a bit of a blow, but Patrick coming on as a sub against Crewe was a good positive point. Wasn't quite up to speed, but we'll give him a couple of games and I'm sure we'll get there. And Morgan Feeney on the bench, left on the bench over Corey Whelan, starting ahead of him. I've got to mention, actually, I haven't put this in the talking points, but Corey Whelan, full credit to him in the way he's played in the last few games as well.
Yeah, I think he could be one of them. I mean, I don't think he's going to keep Feeney out of the team when Feeney's fit, but I think Whelan's one of them that he'll just come in and do a job in maybe a couple of different positions this season.
Well, we're lucky as well, not just having him able to do that. We've got Ben Barkley coming back in the next week or 2 as well, we're hoping, which will be nice. And obviously Ryan Edmondson chomping at the bit hopefully soon, which we'll talk about when we touch on the Hartlepool preview section. Before we go into the second half of the show, let's do the quick League 2 round-up then, Mike. Looking at the weekend fixtures first, then we'll quickly touch on the midweek ones that happen in this midweek. Yeah, Orient's unbeaten run to the season ends. fair play to them, 11 games in and finally losing a 2-1 defeat against Newport County at home as well, actually, to be fair. I can still see them being right up there at the end of the season, to be honest, though. I don't think this will be too much of a setback for them.
Yes, I think you're probably right there. But, yeah, we still don't really have anyone particularly pulling away from everyone. I mean, Orient and Stevenage have both started well, but I don't know. There's a bit of me that thinks that they're not... that it's not bold opinion to say that they won't be in the top 3 at the end of the season, despite how well they've started.
Okay, I feel like... You don't feel Orient will be in the top 3?
I'm not saying that they won't be, but I'm saying it's not a completely bold opinion to say that there's a chance that they might not.
Fair enough. I've just got this feeling as well. I mean, you look at... To be fair, you say no one's pulling away, but from 3rd to 4th, there's a 5-point gap at the moment, albeit Northampton have played a game more than Bradford, who are actually next in 4th position. But those 3 at the top... They're giving themselves a nice cushion so they can afford to have a defeat and then start to run again without worrying about teams overtaking them. That's the key way they might look at it.
Yeah, but neither Orient nor Stevenage were anyone's picks for sort of...
Well, we all predicted Stevenage should be dark horses, albeit I don't think anyone was expecting them to be this good, to be fair. But again, they've had a flying start, and it's one of those ones with them, though, I think, if they were to pick up the same sort of level of injuries that we've had, I think they'd struggle. Because I don't think they've got the depth there. I think that's where the difference is for someone like Stevenage. But yeah, obviously Northampton made it 5 wins in a row to close the gap to 2 points behind Orient. But then, what do you know, in midweek they went and slipped up and lost 1-0 at Walsall. Their first win in like 8 or 9, I think, as well. So goes to show, doesn't it? Stevenage right up at the top. Another 2 wins in a week for them. Obviously a 2-1 win at Crawley and a 3-0 win at home over Sutton. I mean, they are absolutely flying out there under Steve Evans, you know, which is, despise the man all you want, he's a good manager at this level, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've kind of touched on that before, but other teams, Stockport still languishing in 19th, aren't they? Well, who saw that coming? Yeah,
they're on a terrible start. I mean, before we talk about the teams at the bottom, I've got to pick out Bradford as well. They're on a real charge, aren't they?
Yeah,
I think obviously like us, they've obviously not lost in 7 in that period. They've won 4 of the games, so fantastic run for them. Mark Hughes really starting to turn things around there. But like I said, down at the bottom, just 2 points were picked up by the bottom 6 at the weekend. They were a point for Stockport and a point for Hartlepool. Colchester, Crawley, and Harrogate in particular are on dreadful runs, aren't they? And I just have this feeling that come the end of the season, I don't think that bottom 6 or 7 is going to change a huge amount, you know. I think you're going to see some teams really... I think Rochdale might pull themselves away a little bit, but I can see Crawley be down. I can see Colchester definitely be down there, Harrogate as well, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see Crawley doing as bad as they have done, to be honest. I didn't think that they'd be great, but, I mean, Rochdale, Colchester, Harrogate, Hartlepool were all sort of... It was hard to predict 2 out of them 4 to go down. So yeah, it won't surprise me at all if they're down there come the end of the season. Although, you know, as we'll sort of segue into the next part of the show, Hartlepool have maybe turned a little bit of a corner now.
Be interesting to see how they got on in the near future, won't it? Right, we'll take a short break and then we'll be back with the second half of the show.
Hi, I'm Paul Simpson from the football club. Welcome to the Brunton Bugle.
Oh, I'll never stop making me laugh. That from the football club. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Right.
We should get another Paul Simpson on who isn't from the football club. And he can...
Yes. Yeah. Yes, let's find one and surprise people. Right, into the second half of the show. Normally we start the second half of the show with the Behind Enemy Lines section. Unfortunately, the only Hartlepool United podcast out there ceased recording in the last couple of weeks. And I contacted him and said, well, is there any chance possibly you could come on? Unfortunately, they're really busy, so... and the regular local reporter for the Hartlepool United, one of their papers, is away this week, so it's someone standing in, so I didn't really want to put it all on them to do it. So yeah, unfortunately, there's no Behind Enemy Lines section for Hartlepool. I mean, this is the kind of thing you'd expect from Your Salford and Harrogate's not from Hartlepool United, isn't it? But there you go. We'll try and get someone for the second half of the season. I think we spoke to a fan last season, didn't we? But I just haven't had a chance to contact him and see if he's still available to do something. So there you go. So there's no behind enemy line section. Away pub, as recommended by the London Badge, is Jackson's Wharf. That's based at the Highlight in Hartlepool, which is TS240XN. That's your postcode to get there. I've never been. To be honest, Hartlepool's one of those ones, away days. I don't know about you. You probably enjoy it more than me, but I'm never a big fan of it. It's just a pain in the backside to get to, and actually there's not that much there when you get there.
Well, do you know what? I never was a fan of it, but that away game where we won 3-2 and Jabbo scored twice, I think.
Well,
that was an incredible away game, and that sort of changed my perception of it a little bit.
Yeah, I've been a few times, and I've been there for the 4-0 win when Lubo scored and Gary Medine got a hat-trick, but bar that, I'm just not a fan of it. It's just not one of those games that I've ever really thought of. I won't go on my way to go there that often, to be honest. That's the feeling, really. Interesting you mentioned that game, the 3-2 game, Mike. I'm going to ask you a question now. And my question is based around that game.
Okay.
So the question, quite simply, is... Carl United, obviously, the last time we beat Hartlepool was that game. It was in August 2015. United won 3-2 at Victoria Park. Obviously, you mentioned Jabbo scored twice there. Who scored the other goal?
Tom Miller.
Indeed, he did. And who scored a goal?
Left-footed screamer. Who scored for them? Billy Painter scored a penalty.
Scored a penalty, of course he did.
And I forget who else
it
scored.
was a bit Scott Harrison. You wouldn't know him, basically.
Okay.
I want you to name United's starting 11 and 7 subs for this game, if you can.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Right.
Well, in goal, I think, we still had Gillespie back then, didn't we?
Yep, Mark Gillespie.
I think this was around 3-5-2 time. So I want to say Tom Miller.
Yeah.
Michael Raines.
Yeah.
Danny Granger.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to struggle. Did Mark Ellis play?
No. Mark Ellis. I don't think Mark Ellis had signed at that point, actually.
Did Alexander McQueen play?
Alexander McQueen did play in this game, but I think he played in midfield, actually, funny enough. No, in fact, no, sorry.
Okay.
I think he played at right wing back, because I think Tom Miller was actually one of the centre-backs for this game.
Yeah, that would make sense. Anthony Sweeney?
Sweeney was on the bench.
I remember Jason Kennedy played because he considered a penalty.
Yeah.
Obviously Jabbo. Derek Asamoah, I don't know if he started, but he certainly played near the end.
Yeah, he came off the bench.
Yeah. Who else did we have around then? Luke Joyce?
Luke Joyce played, yeah. So of the starting 11, you've got 3 more to get. You've got a defender, a midfielder, and a forward.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of sort of the left-sided centre-back of that back 3, to be honest.
It'll surprise you, because it surprised me when I saw it. I was like, I didn't even realise they were still with us at that point.
No idea. You're going to have to give me that
Troy
one.
Archibald Henville played that.
I
genuinely was like, what?
Yeah.
He was still with us? I thought he'd gone by then. So there you go.
I think, did Alex Gilead come on off the bench?
No, he wasn't even with us then at that point.
Okay, because in my head, this was a few weeks before we played Liverpool in the Cup.
No,
so
he played. Liverpool was his second appearance for us, Gilead.
Okay.
Because he played at York, I think, the week before, yeah. So the other midfielder, do you want to know him?
Was it Zinedine Zidika?
No, he came off the bench late on.
Okay.
Bastian Herry was the other midfielder.
Yeah.
And the other forward?
The other forward, was it Charlie Wyke?
No, he wasn't even on the bench.
Okay. Other forward other than Jabbo? No, you're going to have to...
Stephen Rigg.
Yeah, of course.
Stephen Rigg playing this game. And obviously, you've got... how many subs have you got remaining to get? You've got 4 subs left to get. You probably struggle to get these. I mean, your subkeeper you'll probably get.
Subkeeper Crocombe?
No. He's afterwards.
Subkeeper... No.
Dan Hanford was the subkeeper.
Dan Hanford.
I'll tell you this because we'll be here all day otherwise. Basically, your defender on the bench, Pat Brough, was on there.
Yeah.
And Angelo Balanta was also on the bench.
Yeah.
And the other sub who came on, Joe Thompson.
Ah,
So there you go. So that was your team from that. So that's the quiz question if anyone wants to have a crack at that at home. Let's get into doing the preview section then. So this weekend we're going to the Suit Direct Stadium. That's a terrible name for it. I don't care how much sponsor offers you money. Just don't take it if it's something like that. It just sounds terrible. Appalling. Referee Tom Reeves from Warwickshire. It's his second season as an EFL referee. He's taken charge of 13 games so far this season, handing out 51 yellow cards and no red cards. Last season he handed out 121 yellow cards and 7 red cards in 34 games. The last United game he took charge of was the 2-1 defeat at Crawley Town last year, where 6 players were booked. Jack Arm was the only United player to be cautioned in that game. Right head-to-head record is 108th meeting between the two sides, so played quite a few times against each other. Of those, United have won 50, 20 have been draws, and 37 have been wins for the Monkey Hangers. So pretty good going. That's one of those rare ones where we're comfortably out on top, isn't it? So that's nice to see. Hartlepool, it's not been a great start to the season, I think it's fair to say for them. It's been a bit of a tumultuous, how do you say the word? Tumultuous summer, is that the right word? I've probably said
I don't know if that's a word, to be honest.
Yeah, it's something like that, isn't it? But it's it's been a bit of a up and down summer for them. Well, not up and down, right? It's just been a hectic one for them. Because I'm just counting down what they've signed, Mike. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 new signings.
Yeah.
Coming into the club this summer. They only it looks like they've only had, I'm just trying to count down here, not actually that many have gone. Only about 10 have gone, I think.
Well, it's the players
9,
that they've lost that is a bigger deal for me. I think they've lost basically the spine of the team.
Well, Molyneux's the standout one, isn't he, really? He's always been a decent level, I think. Neil Byrne going to Tranmere as well, and Odesina gone to losing players to teams in our division, and not players who've been just let go. Players who've basically have gone for undisclosed fees, or they've basically run down their contracts and left. Quite a lot of them. Marcus Carver is one they're probably not too fussed on because he just didn't quite turn out to be as good as they'd hoped. He's gone to Scunthorpe, but the rest of them, Omar Bogle have won as well. All going to other League One, also League Two clubs. Not great, that is it?
No, exactly, and the players that other clubs have obviously wanted for a reason. So they're kind of decent players, and I remember that their fans at the time when they were losing these players were sort of saying that they're really concerned that they could be getting relegated, and it's no surprise to anyone really that they're in the position that they're in.
Yeah, it's not a great really place to be for Hartlepool United. I'm just trying to work out how many players they've actually got in their overall squad. I'm just waiting for this webpage to load. 25. So if they've brought 16 in, it means only 9 of them were actually in place from last season. That's too big of a turnaround. That we saw in the summer actually keeping a lot of them in for us has actually been advantageous.
Yeah.
It's helped us. There's been a bit of continuity there. Looking through the squad, the one that stands out is the one that maybe surprised a few people of how well he's done is Josh Amera, who signed from Wealdstone in the summer. Obviously, Olafelo Olamola went in the opposite direction to Wealdstone on a free, but I think he was at the end of his contract. It wasn't a case of a swap deal. But Amera's come in and he's hit the ground running for them. He's the one sort of starlet really for the team, isn't he? Goals.
And it's good when clubs sort of pluck these players out of non-league and they take their chance in the Football League, and you have to wonder how he'd be doing if he was playing in a decent team this season. Yeah,
you do wonder that, don't you? Obviously, they made a fair few signings have come down from Scotland, haven't they? Obviously, that was the influence of Paul Hartley, who was appointed as manager in the summer, promptly sacked after 11 games in charge. It's one of those weird appointments. He did quite well in Scotland, but it kind of felt like he was being thrown in. He was thrown into a situation where they were already on a bit of a downward spiral at that point, weren't they? And it probably needed someone who knew League Two quite well to sort it out.
I'll tell you who it reminds me of, Roddy. And basically signing a load of players from his home country who maybe aren't very good.
A little bit like that, but what I'd say there's probably a closer correlation between League Two in England and the Scottish lower leagues than there was with the Irish League, basically. I think that's the best way to put it. It's not as big a difference in moving. But yeah, I get your point. It's a really fair point, actually. And because the one player actually they did sign that stood out to me, and I thought he's a really good signing. It's Jack Hamilton, who's on loan from Livingston. He was at Arbroath, I think, last season, and he was fantastic for them in the Scottish Championship. Really, really good. And it just doesn't seem to have worked out for him there so far. It just not really been at the same level he was with Arbroath. Sometimes players just fit with clubs and coaches, don't they? And yeah, the gamble with Hartley having done so well at Cove Rangers just didn't pay off, did it? And he now finds himself out of a job. And who did they bring in to sort it out? Mysterious Curle himself.
Yeah.
And Curle's someone who divides our fans, isn't he? I think it's fair to say. There's a lot of fans who absolutely love him. There's a lot of fans who can't stand him. There's a lot of fans who just... I think both me and you are fairly about it, really. So. I would say. I think Dan's very much of the can't stand him category. I think he would never deny that. Didn't really like him from the start, if he's honest. He's the right man to get them out of trouble, though, isn't he? Surely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, say what you like about him at Carlisle, he was the man that we needed that season to keep us up, and he threw a rocket up some players' backsides, I think. And I think his approach that season might be a bit of a dying art. Some of his words to players were maybe not the friendliest, but it's what they needed. You know, they weren't very good, and yeah, it seems that, you know, he's had a bit of a response already at Hartlepool. I know the new manager bounce isn't exactly a new thing, but some managers come into a struggling team and they don't get that bounce. So
I do wonder if you look at it and you think, actually, maybe the squad they've got isn't that bad. Maybe there is some decent players in there, and he's just needed someone to get them a little bit better organised and a bit better driven, and potentially get them results. He's only got an interim job there, though, hasn't he? It's not been confirmed like till the end of the season or anything like that. He's just basically it's a sort of week by week basis at the moment. I mean, it's a pretty good job interview so far, though, isn't it? Really, I can't see them not appointing him as manager, depending on how things obviously go over the next couple of games. But the way he's gone so far, I don't think he's quite unbeaten. I think they've lost one game under him against Sutton. I can't remember exactly when he came in, but last 5 games, that's the only 6 games. Sorry, that's the only game they've lost. And obviously, last week they got a 2-2 draw at Mansfield thanks to a late equaliser from O'Meara. And then in midweek, they beat playoff chasing Doncaster Rovers at home 2-1. So it's not the easy tie I think a lot of people were expecting, is it?
No, it's not, and I think it's going to be quite a tight affair, to be honest. Which, you know, we'll do predictions in a bit, but yeah, it's certainly not an easy game.
No, it'll certainly be a challenge. I think it's fair to say. One of those ones we kind of expect them to struggle down there in the bottom. I think if Curle gets a job full time, do you see them pulling away from trouble?
Maybe not as far as sort of mid-table, but I think if they could, given the way that they started the season, I think if they'd just finish bottom half comfortably away from relegation, that'd be a decent season for them, and then rebuild in the summer.
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure, knowing what Curle's like, he'll certainly want to rebuild very quickly, although I think Nicky Adams might be too old now for another spell in League Two, unfortunately. But yeah, so
Callum Hope on the other hand, though.
Well, maybe. Yes, I think we're expecting a tough game this one. Talking about United, I mean, injury wise, it is looking better, isn't it? I mean, obviously this weekend's going to be too soon for Ben Barkley. We touched on that, but maybe Ryan Edmondson on the bench instead of Bilardo possibly might be the first one, maybe.
Yeah, and I think Edmondson could work well, you know, as you sort of get his fitness up, as a player that you bring on for like the last 20 minutes. You know, if we're not winning, I think as an impact sub, I think he could cause teams a lot of problems.
Yeah, I mean, looking at injuries wise, obviously Dixon and Senior are their ACLs. Although Senior probably about a month away from coming back now, which is another real positive potentially. Someone to give Finn back a bit of competition. Scott Simons obviously out as well. Short to medium long term, sort of Hilton and Devitt, 6 to 8 weeks around about those two. But then the other ones, Toby Show Silva, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks he'll be back fit and raring to go. As we said, Ben Barkley thinking about 1 week for his ankle injury. The only slight concern is Callum Guy, isn't there? So he rolled his ankle very late on in the game against Crewe. He actually got caught quite late, actually. It's a bit of a, I wouldn't say a naughty one, it was one of those ones where you're like, you should have kind of, you know, maybe the ref could have given us a free kick in that situation, but didn't. I should actually say, I didn't say this when we were talking about the Crewe game. Referee in the Crewe game was excellent, really good. If we're going to, have a go at referees when they're poor, got to give them credit when they're good, because he was very good. He was quick on his giving bookings and stuff like that when it was bad tackles. I mean, Huntington put a particularly bad tackling in that game. But even things like foul throws, he was straight on like, no, that's a foul throw. Take it again or move it back and stuff. So fair play to him. But yeah, what would you make any changes for this game?
I think a lot would depend on Callum Guy. I think if he's injured, we have the option of maybe slotting Whelan into midfield and putting Feeney in that defensive role. I know Whelan maybe isn't the best in midfield, but I think if he was to maybe sit deeper, it would maybe allow the likes of Moxon to get forward a little bit more. If
you offered me a choice of the two, I think I'd probably rather move Mellish into midfield. I don't think Whelan's quick. Whelan's quick enough. I think players would run around him. That's my problem. Centre back, he's fine and he copes with all of it, but I don't think he's quite fast enough. And if anything, I'd rather put. It's got to be Mellish or Harris for me, basically, into my choices. I think Charter's maybe still building up his fitness, probably not quite ready to be played a full 90, but he's a potential option as well. Maybe he's done well when he started games in the past. But in terms of up front, would you swap Stretton for Patrick, or would you keep it as is?
I'd probably keep as it is. I mean, we've shown in games when we're chasing games that going 4-3-3, we've looked pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think Simo needs to work out really which games would be better starting 4-3-3 perhaps. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of the starting players who have done enough wrong to justify dropping them, really. Yeah. Okay.
Right, well, let's do match predictions. Dan picked up a point, I think, didn't he? I think he got the goal score, one of the goal scores right against Grimsby. Dennis he got.
Yeah.
So very frustrating. He's moved a point ahead. He's on 9, I'm on 7, and you're still stuck on 4. Can you get yourself off 4, Mike? What are you going for this weekend?
Well, this weekend I'm going to go for 2-1, and I'm going to go for Huntington and Mellish.
Oh, okay. 2 defenders scoring goals. Okay, fair dues. Right, I'm going to go for 2-1 as well, actually. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win, and I'm going to go for goals from Dennis and... who else? Dennis and Mellish, basically. And, that's what I'm going to go for. Right, here's what Dan's predictions is for that game.
I'm going to go for a pulsating 3-2 win. Goals from Christian Dennis, obviously. I'm going to go Ryan Edmondson if he's fit. And then an injury time winner for Morgan Feeney to send the Blue Army into raptures.
Oh, he's even done a match report for it already. Does that even happen? So there you go. Right, okay. Thank you, Dan, for those predictions. So we'll be back to see how we got on with those next week. XFL section. Bit to cover this week, though, isn't there, Mike? Actually, it's a surprisingly busy one. We've got to start with the midweek, not that's just gone, but the one from last week, because obviously we recorded quite early last week because of various issues with work and stuff like that and the times we had to do it. And Luke Joyce, he scored, I think, what's his first goal for Radcliffe, an equaliser and a 1-1 draw at home to Whitby Town. So good to see Luke on the score sheet. On to the weekend, Naki Wells, I didn't realise this, he's second top scorer in the Championship right now. He's been quietly just chipping away with a few goals this season. He scored in Bristol City's 2-1 home defeat to Queen's Park Rangers. Sam Cosgrave won't be the first time we mention him here. He scored a penalty in Plymouth Argyle's 1-0 win at Wycombe Wanderers. Ryan Loft scored in Bristol Rose's 2-2 draw at Exeter City, which I know one of our listeners, Greg Bullman's furious about because he'd picked Exeter in a last man standing competition in work, and obviously Loft scored in that game, so not very happy about that, Greg. Arthur Ganua, he was sent off in Morecambe's 3-1 defeat at Accrington Stanley. It's looking like Morecambe will come back down, doesn't it, really, at the moment? Not looking good for them in League One. Into League Two, Andy Cook, shock horror, scored a penalty in Bradford's 2-1 win at Harrogate Town. Paddy Madden scored in Stockport County's 1-1 draw with Walsall. Ashton Addison, he scored a goal in Crawley's 2-1 defeat to Stevenage. Have you seen this goal?
No,
it's a bizarre one. He sort of runs to go and get basically charging a loose ball. The keeper comes out and charges with the ball, but he sort of catches it but slams it into Addison's feet and it squirms loose and goes in the back of the net. Really, really bizarre goal. into the National League. Not a great weekend for Gimme Tory. He was sent off for an off-the-ball incident. If you were going to tell me what's Gimme Tory being sent off for, I would say off-the-ball incident every single time, wouldn't you?
I tried watching this as well, and it was also an off-the-camera incident. But I think it was sort of a headbutt or something.
Well, that's what he did against Exeter, didn't he? At time. So, yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, he was sent off for an off-the-ball incident in Yeovil Town's 1-0 defeat at Southend United. Connor Thompson, he scored in Morpeth Town's 3-0 win over Staveley Bridge Celtic. Same game that, what's his name, Sam Fishburne scored in. David Symington scored for Workington in their 1-1 draw in League Town. Jordan Holt scored in Carlisle City's 2-2 draw with West Auckland Town. And Gavin Riley in the Scottish League One scored in Queen of the South's 1-1 draw with Alloa Athletic. Into midweek, Sam Cosgrove once again scoring goals. Once again, an injury time winner in Plymouth Argyle's 2-1 win in the top table of the clash with Sheffield Wednesday. He's really hit the ground running there, hasn't he? But it's just me. Does he just score at clubs at the extremes? Is that what it is? Yeah. He scores at one right at the top of Scotland and one right at the top of England. It's bizarre, isn't it? But there you go. Going well for Sam Cosgrove there anyway. And Olafelo Olamola scored in Wilston's 2-1 defeat at Solihull Moors. In other news, James Trafford, he started for England under-21s with their 3-1 victory over Germany at Bramall Lane in Sheffield.
Jared Branthwaite was cruelly overlooked for that, I thought.
I wonder if he might end up getting called up in the next one though, because he'll probably have a few more games under his belt. I think he'd only played about 2 games, I think, at this point for PSV when he got the call-ups were, so possibly the reason. James Brown came off the bench for Bolton in their 2-1 friendly win over Israel. And Manny Mampala, he signed on a free transfer for Hyde United. Found his level, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Right, and that's it, Mike. Thanks once again for joining me. Thanks to our sponsors, the London Branch, once again for their support this season. In terms of upcoming episodes, we'll be doing a preview for the Doncaster game next week. But we've also got some interviews coming up, haven't we, Mike? I've been busy. I was up at Brunton Park last week to speak to some players. Not going to tell you exactly who yet. We actually gave away on the Spaces episode that one of the players was Christian Dennis. So we've got an interview coming up with him. We've got a couple. How many more? We've got 3 more interviews that I did that day that are going to come up. Starting with one, we'll put one out on, I think, maybe Monday next week. Basically, a little treat for you at the start of the week. So that's something for you to look forward to ahead of before the preview episode next week. I think that's it, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, I think so.
To cover. Thanks once again for joining me.
Cheers.
No problem at all. And thanks everyone for listening. And most importantly of all, up the Blues.
Up the Blues.